Hi, welcome to another edition of Fleet Momentum video series produced by Automotive Fleet Magazine. This series is designed to put a spotlight on key leaders, trends, and product offerings in the fleet management industry. Today we'll be talking to Stuart Braun and Rick Jacko of Fleet Response, which is sponsoring this episode. We'll be talking about key trends in repair management, including cycle times, parts supply, and the labor market. Well, everyone, welcome to this edition of Fleet Momentum video series. I'm Chris Braun, Associate Publisher at Bobit. I'm here with Rick Jacko and Stuart Braun from Fleet Response. We're going to be talking repair management post-pandemic. We're going to look into 2024 and really see what the future brings. Rick, Stuart, thanks for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here, Chris.
Awesome. Hey, let's just get right into it then. So, all right. Looking at repair management in 2024, we're kind of out of the pandemic. What is your outlook in general for what the market holds for this coming year? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah. What we've seen post-pandemic relative to parts, the parts replenishment continues to improve. We're not seeing as many back-ordered parts. However, we're still seeing OE specific certain parts for certain manufacturers that are on back order, but it is not as problematic it was during the pandemic. We're seeing the labor force start to stabilize a little bit on the collision side as well as the service side. Shop capacity is improving. Pre-pandemic, we were in about a 2 to 3 week backlog before you could get a non-drivable vehicle in for repairs. During the pandemic, that got to be anywhere from 2 to 3 months at times in certain markets. We're starting to see that improve. The used car market salvage values have started to stabilize during the pandemic. Used car values in salvage was extremely high, record levels, and we're starting to see that stabilize a bit. And seeing some reduction in what we consider economic total losses because clients are able to replenish their fleet if they feel they have something that they want to take out of service.
So what kind of proactive steps might the industry be taking, might Fleet Response be taking to kind of reduce cycle time? You want to take that one, Stuart?
Yeah, certainly. It's come down to our shop sourcing, client communication, and understanding what parts are available, and doing some triage for potential total losses. So what we're doing is when we're reaching out to our network vendors, understanding their production schedule, their capacity limits, and making sure we get the client to the right shop. Communicating with the client, understanding how long, or excuse me, understanding the client's need of keeping something in service, understanding what parts, many of our clients have a very similar platform of vehicle, so we want to make sure that we're not going to take a vehicle out of service that we know that a part's on back order. So Rick and myself, we could communicate that to our teams so we keep us out of that situation.
When talking about total loss, there's ways things were managed pre-pandemic. Fleet Response, companies like Fleet Response, is there a new way to manage total loss?
What we've been trying to do is kind of triage them up front, right? Through some AI, based on mileage and damage description, we can almost know that just by looking at the mileage in a year, that there's a good probability that that's going to be an economic total loss. So at that point, we may capture a few images and then make the recommendation to have it sent to one of our salvage sales versus taking it to a shop, paying for the tow, paying for disassembly and an estimate to find out that it's an economic total loss. So what we're doing with that is we're going to save some storage for the client, some tow costs, and it's going to shorten the cycle time of that particular claim for the client.
labor market improvement. Rick, in a general sense, what's your take on the labor market?
Well, as my boss Stu said, man, we are seeing an uptick in that. We're not seeing as many staffing issues as we were seeing before. It has seemed to level out. However, what we are seeing is there's a kind of definitive lack of experienced employees, if you will. We're seeing a much younger workforce, maybe a little less tenure, a lot less experience. So we're kind of learning how to manage between both facets of that workforce. The experienced people that you can talk to, and the inexperienced, that they need some coaching. They need to talk to the experienced people to kind of get kind of the same result as you would from having an easier conversation with the experienced person.
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, Rick, let me just ask you too. Have you seen shops doing anything different to kind of retain technicians in this, still tight labor market?
Yeah, what we definitely see is that the shops are increasing wages for these people to retain them. Post pandemic, we saw a lot of sign-on bonuses, which the auto repair industry is kind of nomadic to begin with. Typically the highest bidder wins, but we haven't seen that. I mean, we've seen shops that have they're keeping their tenured employees. They're keeping the ones that can turn these jobs quickly and cash in on their bread and butter work. We are seeing a lot of techs kind of mentoring the younger people. We had one the other day where it was a young frame technician, and he is working with an older frame technician. My senior adjuster called him. They discussed it, and I just kind of bouncing off between the old and the new and getting a different perspective on it. Sometimes that helps to get a different set of eyes on it. Repair philosophies have changed, and it's good to get the old and the new.
That's funny. You make an interesting point about repair philosophies changing, and I think we all got to basically understand the shift here. A couple more questions to finish up. First of all, and I'm going to stay with you, Rick. So, big question for the industry now: parts supplies. Any improvement in parts supplies? We're talking about both OE and aftermarket alternatives.
As Stu said earlier, the OE, we're not seeing a huge interruption in procurement of the parts. Okay. There are certainly, vendor, manufacturer specific parts that we know of, we're aware of. But for the most part, we haven't been seeing a lot of back order parts along the majority of the fleet, but specific vehicles within our fleet, yes. So with that being said, the alternate parts like the aftermarket segment, that is back to kind of pre-pandemic levels. We're able to get those parts very easily. The used parts, okay, that the used assemblies market, we're starting to see a lot more inventory on that aspect too. And that brings into play, an OEM part that has been taken off another vehicle. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a cheaper price point. We can put it on there, and it's going to fit every time.
Hey, last question. UAW strike. Any fallout from that moving forward? You seen in 2024 regarding disruption of like parts availability?
Maybe we'll see some, early in 2024, but really right now, we're not seeing a lot of disruptions from the strike directly.
Yeah,
Stu, maybe you can help me out on that, but I mean, from our perspective, like we're not really impacted by the strike so far.
yeah, I agree, and that's what I was just echoing what Rick said. It hasn't affected us to a point of any concern at this time.
Great. Well, listen, that's all the questions I have. Thank you for the outlook for 2024. This has been great, and we'll see you next time on the next Fleet Momentum video series. Thanks very much, guys.